Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today on Women's Wealth the Middle Way, the show that answers your questions about money, family, and work. We're here today to talk about a topic that I think Susan and I are both very excited about, women in business. And even though we're very different generations, we both have our own experiences that we want to talk about today. So I'm Fernandez. I'm the COO of Glen Eagle.
And I'm Susan Michael. I am Carol Ann's mom, but the CEO of Glen Eagle. And we are 100% women-owned financial firm, and we're really proud of that. And so today we thought one of the topics we should really start to key in and on is women in business, because I think so many times over the years I've run into women who are at home and they're doing an amazing job with their kids, and they say, I was something that's pretty impressive, and now I'm home, I hope I can get back into it. And my always thought to them is, if you start working and going back to work at 45 and you work 25 or 30 years more, is that enough? And they, yes. And I say, then enjoy every minute. I also run into moms that do something similar to what I did. We do both. There is no right or wrong way. If you're in your heart, you're happy with what you're doing, then it is absolutely the right thing to do. And I think that what we do as women too often is we let other women that are on a different journey affect us or make us question that we're doing the right thing. Think with your heart and do what's right. And there is no right or wrong to that journey. I actually am blessed that I have 5 grandchildren and 1 on the way. And each one of my daughter-in-laws have actually selected a different journey on how they're going to raise children or have careers. And it's really fun to watch. And I think the reason it's working for each of them is because in their heart, they know they are doing what they want to do.
And I think that's maybe where we should start. So Susan, I thought it'd be fun maybe if you just gave a little bit of background of why did you start Glen Eagle and why you're so passionate about it being a woman-owned firm so many years ago. And then maybe we can talk about current day and how things have adjusted, especially with COVID, for women in business.
Well, mine is pretty antiquated because it was so many years ago, but I actually was a teacher. And so I love teaching. I was teaching in Europe for the Department of Defense. My husband at the time was in the military. But as we were transitioning away from the military, I began to get interested in investments, and how I got in is a story in itself for another time. But now I'm in it, and I have 4 small children. And I actually always tell people that my business grew with my children. I started at the kitchen table. I now walk around my firm and meet our advisors out there, and I think, where did this all come from and how did this start? But I think it all occurred naturally. I don't think I put the pressure on myself that I had to be this big by this time. I actually went with the flow. I don't know if that was good. I think that times the kids did do their homework at the conference table. I don't think they ever realized that they had a working mom. I often hear people saying there's a difference between work and family. But for me, I actually thought it blended. I think it was just who we were, and it was our rhythm. And I think sometimes when you think of it like that, that there isn't a separation. Yes, you have to be with your children. When they're sick, I did stay home and rock them. But there were days when I had a conversation with my kids and said, you know, mommy has to go on this business trip, or this is a really big opportunity for us. I made them a part of my journey. When they were doing their homework at the table, often I was sitting at the table doing my work. We were a team, and they felt, in fact, I think they felt sometimes they were the board of directors. Carol will tell you stories that I came home and I was trying to decide whether to go to a larger office space. They were like, Mom, do it, go. Or a couple of times I was frustrated and they'd say, Mom, why don't you just get rid of that person? So I think that they actually believe the business was successful because of them. And that's okay.
And I think that's one of the reasons you started Glen Eagle, is because you wanted to give more women that opportunity to have that flexibility you had. The Middle Way, this podcast name, was actually created because Susan always talks about, you know, having that balance. It's not really one or the other. It's kind of that middle way, finding your ground. And one of the areas that, just a little bit on my story, I went and worked for the big corporations and was encouraged by some mentors and older women in the firm to go get an MBA before having kids and before getting married and things like that. And that was a great blessing that I got because I actually did that. And that's one of the areas we want to talk about, even though there are a lot of strides in women happening, like especially in law school and med school, it's about 50% or even more women than men. The business schools are still struggling to have as many women. Usually they're around 30%. There's a group called Forte, which helped me, and I know helps a number of women, encouraging them to go to business school. But that's a topic that's kind of what made us interested in talking more about this, is why are we still having a lack of women in the business world? I know there's a big push lately to get more on boards and things like that, but it's still struggling a little bit.
I sort of agree with you. I think that even when I started, there were so few women in the industry, but I actually feel like some of the men that I have worked with over the years have probably been my biggest advocates, and they were excited when I was having children. They were excited when I started the business. So I think that we have to look at the gift of, there's a lot of men out there that have young daughters, and they're saying, what is the role for my daughter? You're right. There's not a lot of women still in our world of finance. That's one of the reasons we have a passion for bringing other women into it. But I think that we need to become more creative in all industries. I don't think it has to be finance. I think whether you're a lawyer, whether you're a doctor, whether you're in finance, whether you're in industrial, I think how do we as women create an environment so that we can grow? I often think that we made the mistake back in my day, and I'll really date myself, is too many times we tried to be equal to the men by being like the men. And I think that was one of the biggest mistakes we made. I think that we can set a different tone, a different rhythm, and take people to a whole nother realm with a different dance. And it actually blends beautifully because it can complement the business industry. We talk about little things like, when business started, men wore these heavy wool suits. And so when you go to large office buildings sometimes, and now we're all working from home, but back in the day, women were freezing. And it's because that they set the temperature to men actually wearing these heavy wool suits. Those were just little things that you had to occur. So you had women with heaters at their desk and men, and you talked about that even when you went into the business, people were always changing the heat. Sounds so trivial, so ridiculous, but it's those little things I think that over time you can laugh at, but you can also say, okay, what is it that I'm bringing to this industry? The studies have shown that if there's 3 or more women on a board, that often the board is more proactive and out of the box thinking, and the growth of the firm is better. I don't know if that's, something to ground things on, but I do think that as women, we have to really begin to recognize that we bring a different tone and a different feel. I went to an all-women's college. It's now co-ed, but the mission is many of the people going were first-time, students going there. The mission is still the same for that college, but the difference is what we were told is never stop being who you are. Just bring who you are into the business with your professionalism. And I think that's what we have to do as women.
Yeah, and I think one of the things, whether you're in the finance world or business world or just a stay-at-home mom, one of the things I've definitely been experiencing now, pregnant with my second child, is it's all about having a team, right? So, and sometimes that is your spouse is part of the team. Sometimes it's, more just your coworkers and figuring out how you can balance in your own way. And in some ways, COVID has really helped this. In some ways, it's really hurt it. So I think in some of the positives of COVID, technology and being able to work from home has been forced on some of the bigger firms or even small firms that never really believed they had that capability. When forced to do it, suddenly, it is capable. And some of the other positives, when we talk about business school that we were talking about before, a lot of women, they extended the deadline of when they could go. They were able to take an extra year before they attended because of the pandemic. And so there's some positives in that way. I think some of the negatives is you have a lot of, women who are forced out of the workforce because now they are a teacher at home or things like that. But I think in some ways, the pandemic was a great way to figure out who is your team and how do you balance that when you really are forced in a situation, to be both mom and a businesswoman or even stay at home. How do you get a break from everyone being home.
And I agree.
24/7.
I agree. We talked to a lot of women, and we have had this happen in our own offices. We realize that we can be just as productive in some ways, more productive, and people that maybe had long commutes don't have to commute in every day. And I think when we allow people to control their own destiny, especially women, we can do a lot of things, and we are willing to go that extra mile. But family's going to be first, and we think that some of the employees, when they don't feel like this is such a grueling, we're finding people that had to commute into cities all over the country are starting to say, do I have to do this every day? And where can I give back? And I actually think you're going to be happier employees. Yes, we do need time together. We do need time to interact, but that doesn't mean that it has to be to the detriment of family time, to coaching a sport. And I think COVID, the gift was people realized I love being this role in my children's lives. I love spending more time with my wife. I want to do, an activity that I never had time for. And so I think we're going to be a healthier society, but part of that is compromise and kind of having an open mind.
And I think the last, topic to wrap up here, maybe we should talk about is, as a business owner, especially a women business owner, what are ways that we can be helping bring more women into our companies, whether they're finance or not, and trying to come up with creative ways, maybe not being as stringent as they have to be in the office every day, all day, but also finding creative ways to do work at home. Like, maybe people are logging in at 9 o'clock at night after their kids are asleep, but not able to come in right away. But I think you talk a lot about this, and are a lot of organizations that are trying to encourage, especially business owners. And I don't think it's only women. I think there are a lot of men in the workforce. I mean, I know I've had mentors who are men who are very supportive and helpful in me getting to where I am. And I think you've had the same. But what are ways, that maybe business owners or other women who are in the corporations or in situations can be encouraging others and helping them?
I actually think that we are gifted in society to have a lot of organizations out there for both women, just women, like the Women's Presidents Organization or NABO. There's so many wonderful entities that women can join, and they're going to be able to identify with other women at all different levels of business. Like you could be a startup, or you could be a mid-size, or you could be a huge entity. And the gift is they all come together, and you realize everybody has the same fears, the same desires, the same problems, but just at different levels. There are also organizations, I think, for all of us, for women to join. I happen to be a member of the EO Entrepreneurs Organization. That's a global organization. I love the feedback within my forum of both men and women. So I would encourage you, once you do decide to do that, don't not give yourself the gift of joining an organization that's going to empower you, that you're going to be able to go with on those really rough days and say, I'm having a problem at work, and know that it's confidential, that everything you say stays in that room, and that there are people out there who really want your business to work. And it doesn't have to be your business. They can be a completely different business. So many times I would go to my forum in entrepreneur organization, and I would say, well, I don't think that applies to me. But driving home, I think, you know what, that really did apply to me. And that could have been an industrial business, and here I am in finance. So I think that it causes us to be open, but there are many, many facets. And I would encourage you, if you're a woman, NABO is a great organization, or Women's Presidents Organization. There's also your Chamber of Commerce if you're just starting in your business. The other thing is an organization like Entrepreneurs Organization. Those are entities that are there to empower you to grow as a business owner and have somewhere to go and say, even I have my kids, I'm trying to do this and I can't. And then by the time you leave that meeting, 9 times out of 10, you say, I have direction. I'm so glad I did that. And there are times I would think, I don't want to go to this meeting. I'm so busy, I can't get out of the office, or I can't. And then when you go, you realize. So I think give yourself that gift of professional organizations joining them.
Yeah, and as you can tell, I think we're both pretty passionate about it and could talk about this for a long time, but I think we'll stop there for today. We appreciate everyone joining us. We would love to hear how you're balancing working and maybe your family, or just how you're trying to bring more women into your industry. So definitely would love to continue the conversation and talk some more. But thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you guys. We're all here to help each other.